Today on Inspirational People, Inspirational Stories, my guest is Honor Solomon. Honor is the CEO of AllianceBernstein in Europe, Middle East, and Africa. She's based out of the UK, and she's an award-winning leader, mentor, and D&I advocate. She's gone from working in a clothing store to investment sales, sales management, and CEO in the UK of EMEA of one of the leading investment companies in the industry. I've known Honor for over 15 years, and I have to say she's one of the nicest people you could possibly meet. Honor, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure. I've listened to your other podcasts and feel very, very thrilled and flattered to be invited on.
Well, do you know what, Honor? I met you about 15 years ago, and we were over at a conference in Monte Carlo. It was an investment week, and you were an absolute delight to me and one of the nicest people there. And we got chatting, and I think we got to know each other. And I found out that you were a third Dan in karate. And then I have to say, I got a little bit scared after that. I was looking at this very nice lady who obviously could, sort anyone out if she wanted to. And what I'd love to know, because I'm a big sportsman as well, and I truly believe that a lot of the kind of lessons from sports can be brought into business as well. I'd love to know how martial arts has influenced your own leadership style.
Oh, it's such a good question to start with. Thank you. So martial arts, so I grew up doing Shotokan karate, which comes from Japan. And so it's made up of three component parts. You have kata, which are formal exercises. Then you have sparring, where you are in a ring and you are fighting the other person, and it's about getting the first punch or kick first. And then the third is basics. But the common thread that knits it all together is control and breathing. And you can do your best job on those three elements if you're controlled, if you're thoughtful, if you're mindful, if you've got your breathing right. And that's the piece that I've taken into my life. And you can apply it to so many different elements. If I'm going into an uncomfortable situation, whatever it might be, or uncomfortable because it's just unfamiliar, I tend to take that step back, and I drum this into my kids as the only lesson. If you forget everything else, remember this. It's just this 3 breaths in and 3 breaths out, just to calm the adrenaline, calm yourself down. And once you've done that, it means you can put your best foot forward. So I think that's the key thing I've taken away from martial arts.
I love that. It's all about response rather than the reaction, and calming the self-regulation, the self-nervous system down, which is lovely.
Yes.
And I know you pretty well, and I know you're renowned as having amazingly positive energy. And that's not always easy to keep going. In terms of kind of like a leader's mindset, do you have some kind of morning routine or habits that get you into that sharp and focused state?
A morning routine. So I have 3 youngish children. So I mean, the morning routine is really just keeping everything as balanced as we can, and nobody yelling at each other. It's a miracle if everyone gets breakfast and everyone is wearing all the right clothes for school and all got the right school bags. So yeah, you might say the morning routine is more just getting through it and making sure that I get to work and the children get to school okay. But yeah, for me, it tends to be about preparation being everything. So I try and get everything as ready as I can the night before. I try and get I'm a big victim of being hangry if I haven't eaten or I haven't slept. So getting 6 or 7 hours a night is quite important for me. Otherwise, I tend to droop. In terms of morning routine, I would be lying if I said we were vigorous and structured. But I try and be as organized as I can be in terms of routine and getting things ready the night before.
Yeah, I know what it's like with with kids, especially when they're that age as well. And fair play to you as well. We're talking mindset.
I should say my husband keeps things going as well. So I'm very lucky in that respect as well. I definitely can't take the credit for most of the kids being dressed in the right uniforms.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. And in terms of mindset, which is obviously what I was kind of trying to lead towards, is there any particular large mindset shift that you had or you made in your career that actually you look back now and it actually had the greatest impact on your success?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of mindset, I think it's been a lot about this taking a step back and breathing and thinking about things. Um, a big mindset change for me was this concept of being kind to myself. Um, as a working mum, um, there's an intensity. There's always times when I think to myself, I'm just doing a really rubbish job of being a mummy and being a sister and being a wife and being a daughter. And there are these times when I have my head in my hands and I'm just like, I'm not doing well at it. And then the worst times are when I have the times when I'm also saying I'm not doing very well at work because perhaps there's something going on at home where I need to be a bit more present for that. And so when those two things collide or one escalates over another, it's very important for me to go into this mindset of I'm trying my best. And sometimes I have to think about my personal life more. And then sometimes I need to think about my professional life more. And what I've been able to do is, I think, get myself into a mindset of being kind to myself, that there are different balances for different times. And also, it comes with this mindset of organization and structure. So I can't be everything all the time at home, and I can't be everything all the time here. And it's been about, over the last 20 years of working, being able to put certain things in place to help with that in terms of organization. So, for example, with my children, they get to choose one or two events per term that I attend. I could be going to school with all the events that take place every day, but getting them to choose, putting it in their control, because sometimes the things I think they want me at, I can't be at. But if they give me enough notice, then I'm able to be there. And me and Anthony do the parents' evenings as much as I can. Zoom has really helped with that as well. And the same with work, that if I'm working on a deal, sometimes it can collide with holidays or weekends. I'm not very good at switching off, but it's also about communicating to the children. If we're on holiday, that there are some days when I do need to be more online or on calls. And then when I'm not, so during Christmas holidays is a really good example because it tends to be a bit quieter, giving them all of me. So really trying very hard not to look at my phone, not to call in, and just being disciplined in that respect. So I think this mindset, in summary, is about being kind and having elements in place which help me to structure myself and then be kind to myself.
I love that. And in terms of mind and heart,
Yeah.
in terms of a leader yourself, do you think you lead more with your heart or more with strategy, or is it a blend?
I think it's probably a blend. I mean, I say it a lot. My team are probably bored of me saying it, but I think culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Mm.
So you can have the best strategy, from the best management consultant, whatever it might be, but if you haven't got that culture around it, then I think it falls apart. So what that comes down to me is it's really a blend of both. I do listen a lot to my heart. And when I say my heart, it's how I feel, but it's my gut. I think to myself, what is my body telling me about a situation? Am I trusting an instinct? But then with my head, I think it's very important to lead with a vision, so people can understand absolutely the direction you're going in and then attach strategy, the how we're going to do this, to that vision. So I think it's a combination. With that heart point, in every business I've ever led, I've always had two rules, and these two rules are in my head non-negotiable. And they do come more from the heart and the culture side. And these two rules are: one, family comes first. For me and for my team, we all work really hard. That's what is expected and important. But we are first and foremost, we're daughters, wives, sons, whatever it might be. And there are times when we need to prioritize that. And then the second rule is that nothing goes left unsaid. So at times with my team, it can be really heated. It can be, when we disagree. But the important thing is transparency. And I don't like politics. I don't like hierarchies. I like just getting things out and in the open and part of discussion. So I think those things also feed into culture and heart.
I love that, and I think communication is the most important thing in terms of any corporate as well, to make sure that everybody knows exactly where everybody stands. Because there's so many people out there that they have a different perspective in how they see things. So to be understand that can sometimes bring people together in a collaborative sense towards collective goals.
Yeah.
Um, I know you are a brilliant leader, and I'm sure you've had some difficult times in terms of, whether it be markets, whether it be people decisions, whatever. What do you think is the most courageous decision that you've made in terms of heart as a leader?
Yeah. When you come into a business, it's really important that you take a step back. When I come into a business, I take a step back and listen and put a stamp on it based on the culture and the strategy that you see to assess. I always think of myself it's a bit like a doctor who, when a patient comes in and they tell you what the situation is, then you diagnose accordingly. And I think it's important to do that within the culture of what you're seeing there and then, rather than saying, I've come from a different firm, this is how we did it there. And I think that takes courage to take that step back and listen. So I've always when I've come in, led by a 90-day plan. And that 90-day plan is split out into 30-day sections. So the first 30 days are about understanding, having lots of conversations with your stakeholders and your peers and your direct reports and indirect reports, and asking very simple questions. What is working so we can celebrate it and endorse it? And what's not working so we can improve it? And then the next 30 days are about taking all of that information back and then assessing, what are the common themes. And then the next 30 days are about acting on those themes. So it doesn't necessarily take courage to have all of that together. To do that is the easy part. But what it does take courage to do is to then act on that. And a lot of the time you're bringing in new thoughts that might not have been considered before. And sometimes you're making difficult decisions. So that might be a change of strategy direction, that we're going for one market instead of another. Or it might be exiting underperformers. And that obviously is a really difficult decision and has to be done under deep consultation with the person and with the wider organization. And so for me, it's about who's on the boat to make the boat row faster as well. But I think all of that takes courage. And that's something that I've had to do really every time I've taken on a new leadership role.
Yeah, I love that. And you mentioned culture, and obviously culture is very important. I always say the results that you get in life come from the actions you take. They come from the decisions you make. They come from the habits created, which is effectively the culture. In terms of team culture, I know you're a big advocate, like myself, of D&I. And I know you're an award-winning leader as well, that linked into that. I'd love to know, what does real inclusion look like to you beyond the policies that most companies have?
Oh, so real inclusion it's not necessarily about a certain type of person. It is every person feeling that they are part of a discussion. Every person feeling that they have the same right to contribute, be heard, be recognized, be elevated. That's for me what it comes down to. And then taking it further, it's about understanding what are the restrictions, what holds people back, certain people back from being able to do that. And then going deeper into what those restrictions are, and then on a very tactical and strategic basis, being able to fix those. And a lot of the time, it does require really listening and understanding. One of my favorite experiences actually at a previous firm was we were running a session on neurodiversity. And I'd actually expected at this session to have a lot of parents of children who are neurodiverse attend this session. But what became clear was before the session, I started receiving emails from people saying, will my attendance at this session be confidential? I was like, yeah, of course. And then as we went on in the session, people started getting very emotional. And it became clear that it was because we were talking about them, and that we had a lot of neurodiverse people within the organization who felt they had to hide. And that this was giving them a forum, an open forum to essentially be themselves. And what became clear was that they were masking themselves at work because they were trying to mask their neurodivergence. And actually, this neurodivergence brings another very positive angle. Some of these individuals were much more analytical, for example, and we should be celebrating that and encouraging that. And what that I took away from that is, let's adapt our recruitment process, our appraisal process for these neurodiverse people, and then we can help them to excel. So that's just one of the experiences I had. But yeah, for me, inclusion is about everyone being recognized and heard and being able to elevate and grow.
Yeah, I love that. And we can see with people like Richard Branson, Elon Musk, there's no limitations to neurodiversity. And in terms of diversity inclusion, obviously, as well, the more angles that you have on the problems, the better solutions you can potentially get for the answers as well, which is
Yeah,
lovely.
absolutely.
Now, I know you're also a mentor, and you were nominated, I saw, for Mentor of the Year. I think it was last year, I'm not sure. I'd love to know, in terms of mentorship, how do you personally mentor up and uplift rising stars from underrepresented backgrounds?
So I take on 4 mentees per year. So I'm quite sort of structured about how I do it. And I think the first thing is about the mentor and mentee relationship being really clear between the two. For me, it's a different relationship than being a friend or a sponsor or a colleague. For me, a mentor-mentee relationship is very structured in the fact that I only take on a mentee for a year period. And then we meet on it tends to be a 3 or 4 week basis. But at the beginning of the year, we set out what are the objectives we want to achieve. And then the mentee brings those what they want to achieve to every session. So we have strategic objectives and then tactical objectives as well that we work through. And as a mentor as well, it's about me being always available for these mentees if they come across roadblocks. So for me, it's about that structure. In terms of how helping from underprivileged backgrounds, for me, here we work very closely with lots of organizations that particularly focus on socioeconomics. So it's taking on mentees from those organizations as well. But it's also recognizing not just from underprivileged backgrounds, but from every spectrum of diversity, that there's different needs from a mentee. And I feel that I'm not doing a good job as a mentor at times when I haven't really got under the skin of what are those special elements that I need to recognize that are holding the person back, whether that be their background or their sex, or we talked about neurodivergence, or their sexuality, or something else. It might be imposter syndrome or a difficult experience they've had at work. So as a mentor, I really like to understand what the barrier is for us then to work out a strategy of how do we overcome it together, and then giving them the skills so that they can move forward on their own.
Yeah, I love that. I absolutely love that. And it would be remiss for me not to go into a few client stories in terms
Oh
of
gosh.
your relationship wisdom, as we both shared various different do's and conferences and everything together. And I'm sure, I think I was looking at some stats. I think in the asset management world, especially in the past, it's been very male dominated. And, obviously, I think that's slowly changing, which it needs to. But just in terms of that, we had a lot of fun in the old days, probably before 2008. But in terms of, what would be your most memorable or unusual client experience that you can recall in your career?
Oh gosh, there've been so many. I mean, as you alluded to, Doug, it's changed a lot. Like when I started out in industry, it was there weren't many women. Uh, it was very normal for me to be the only woman in the room, and that was, and so in terms of unusual experiences, it was very common for me to, even when I sort of got promoted, to be the person who was asked to pour the tea and serve the food and those sorts of things, which it was just sort of the way it was. I wouldn't blame anyone for that at this point, but I do think all of that was very character strengthening for me, in terms of specific client experiences. I think back to how I mean, a couple that have really shaped me. There was one client, one of my first jobs, where we just did the best pitch and we came out and they said, well done. We'll be talking to you about fees and how we move forward. Went back to the office and I was like, yes. And then about an hour later, they called me and they said, oh, I'm sorry, we got you confused and you haven't won it. And then there've been other client experiences where I pitched and I thought, oh gosh, that has gone so badly for one reason or another. I've not, I'm very, very strict on myself and thought to myself, oh, I've forgotten a stat or I haven't referenced something that I should have done, and come out and thought that was a disaster. And then the reverse. You can expect that actually we've won it and they've said, oh, you've done the best job. And so my learning is sometimes you just can't call it. But yeah, those sorts of client experiences are the ones I tend to remember the most because they're either the most joyous or the most sad.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And in terms of fund management, obviously, I worked in the industry myself for 21 years and absolutely loved it, I have to say. So many great people, so many great relationships that I still
Yeah.
have as well. In terms of a client's perspective, I would love to know, just for the people who don't understand fund management, could you tell us a little bit about what separates a good fund manager from a great fund manager?
Oh my goodness, I love that. Um, so I think about the letter P, which stands for portfolio manager. And all of these characteristics begin with P. So I like to simplify things. So the fund manager or the portfolio manager needs to have a very clear philosophy. So they need to have this vision for what is their portfolio aiming to do. Then with that philosophy, which they need to be able to articulate, a process. How are they implementing and bringing the philosophy life through a very clear and structured and importantly, repeatable process? And then on the side, away from the portfolio manager, the product. So it needs to be in a structure that people can buy it in. And it needs to be at the right price. I just went for lunch at Marks and Spencer's, and I was looking at the salads, and there was one for £12 and one for £8, and I went for the one that was £8. It was just as good quality, and so these sorts of things we apply from our normal life into fund management, and so process, philosophy, price, and product, I think are important.
Yeah, I totally agree. In terms of, obviously, there are great clients and there are tough clients. Is there anything you recall in terms of a tough client relationship that you managed to turn into a really rewarding one? And what was it that changed, in your opinion?
Tough client into a rewarding one. Um, with human beings, it's about chemistry sometimes. You can walk into a room and you can feel an automatic connection with someone. And it might come from the gut, or it might come from the head, or it might be just from a common experience. And that is just the most beautiful situation always. Or you can go into a room and it feels the reverse. And it might be because of body language, or it might be something that they've said, or it might just be an experience you've had before you walked into the room, which has put you off and has meant that that connection has not been there. So whenever I walk into a room or start a new relationship, what I'm looking for is that connection. And when it's not been there, what I've tried to do, which, we're all human beings and we're all diverse and we're going to find these connections in different ways. What I've tried to do is find the common ground between us. So a lot of the time, this is for us, it's markets. Where do we get excited about performance? And that sort of plays the portfolio manager as well. Where are we getting excited about the performance? Where are we getting excited about currencies or products? Or it might be more on the human side, where we have commonalities between us. So is it because we are both mothers, or is it because we've both been working for 20 years, or is it that we both come from the same section of the country? Or, it's about finding those areas where we can connect rather than recognizing and getting hung up on our differences.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I know I've seen you in action, and I also know that you won awards for sales, distribution, and marketing. And I'd love to know, I'm sure there's some up and coming salespeople out there that would love to know, is there anything that you haven't said so far that could be a tip or a trick to make them a better relationship manager or a better salesperson?
Oh, I always think about the advice my mother gives me, which has nothing to do with sales, by the way. It's always about, you've got two ears and one mouth, and use them proportionally. So essentially, it's about listening more than talking. So make sure that you're listening double the time. And that's always the advice I give to up and coming, but also much more experienced salespeople who perhaps don't listen as much. I'm a bit of a talker, and sometimes I have to take that step back and go, okay, listen. And essentially, the advice is that the client should be talking more than you. We want to be able to really understand what is keeping the client awake at night, so then we can help them rather than just essentially pushing on them what we want to talk about. We need to listen to what they want to talk about and respond on that.
Yeah, I love that. Obviously, since I've left, it's been a lot of changes, including COVID, which came in. How is it that you as a business and you or your team as salespeople have managed to shift in terms of the 3-day week, which is happening in a lot of places, and people working from home to be able to get face to face with clients?
Yeah. So we do 4 days in and 1 day out. We've made recently the move from the 3-2 structure. And the background to that is 3 words, which is, we are better together. We're better together. And the reason why I'm supportive on this is, if I think about how I came up the curve, how both of us came up the curve, it was about listening to our manager, listening to people on the phones, watching people in action. And I think the reality is that with the 3-2, with the flexibility of that, it means that sometimes junior people are not with those senior people. Sometimes there can be a real crossover of days to be able to watch and learn. And I think that can be an inhibitor to growth. But saying that, I think it's important for us to be pragmatic. So, for example, I'm a working mother, and so sometimes there is pragmatism that's needed around being around. But again, it all goes back to being very well organized and engagement with clients and understanding what model does that client work with. Are they in 5 days, and actually Friday is their meeting salespeople day, or is it another model? So again, it goes back to that listening and then diagnosing and then assessing that what that client engagement looks like. A lot of my clients prefer to meet in person, and then a lot like to be on Zoom. And so, finding that way that they like to engage and then working with them on that.
Yeah, I love that. And in terms of where you are now and where you might want to be in the future, what kind of legacy would you like to leave? Not just in finance now, I mean in business in terms of leadership.
Oh, yeah, I always think that this is very somber and morbid, but I always think on my gravestone, it will never say she was CEO of Europe, Middle East, and Africa for AllianceBernstein, and she started her career at BlackRock, went out. It will never say that, and that's sort of in your professional life. It's how you define yourself. It will say I'm a mother, a daughter, a wife, all those sorts of things, and so I do think about that a lot. That I want to be a good person, not just as a relationship person, but in my family, but a good person. So the legacy I think about a lot is it's not what you do, but it's how you make people feel.
Mm.
And sometimes I'll come out of a meeting and I'll just ask myself that question: how have I made that person feel? And I hope that in the majority of cases, like on this podcast, in our engagements out of this room, I hope I've made them feel that they've grown from their conversation with me, that they felt heard, that they felt that there was a connection. And I think that's what I want my legacy to be, rather than, yeah, she was a CEO of EMEA and she won this deal or that deal, or she lost this deal. It's more how I've made people feel is what I would like to be remembered by. I like that question.
Yeah, I love that answer as well. Okay, a fun quick fire round,
Hey,
just for a bit of fun. So, coffee or green smoothie?
green smoothie.
More powerful, intuition or analysis?
Oh, both. I'd probably go with my gut intuition.
Cool.
But I do a lot of analysis as well. I'm not very good at this quick fire round, but I do a lot of analysis.
So, karate training or competition or the boardroom strategy, which feels more intense?
A karate competition.
Love it.
You're never sure if you're going to have a part of your body broken. So yeah, it's definitely a bit scarier sometimes.
Love it. If your leadership style were a movie or character, what would it be?
Oh gosh. Um, the Notebook, which
Ooh, I
is
love,
so a big long a journey, I think, which
I
is
love that. I love that. Yeah. Actually, it brought a tear to my eye when I saw that one. It's a lovely film. And in terms of best compliment you've ever received as a leader,
she saw me, she heard me.
oh, I like that. Going back to your 2 ears and one mouth. And in terms of a book or a podcast that has changed your thinking recently, any other than this one, obviously, but anyway.
Yeah, I travel a lot. And so I've been listening for my most recent flights to Stephen Bartlett,
Oh,
to
I love
his, yeah. And so that's really made me think. And I love the range of people that he's been introducing. And so, yeah, it's made me tearful. It's brought me joy. I've really enjoyed those.
Yeah, I love him too. I was on the same podcast as you. He's a great guy, super guy. And in terms of finance, if you weren't doing finance, what would you do?
My original plan had been to be a doctor, and I missed the grades. And so, but actually, I think I would have been an absolutely useless doctor. So, yeah, that had been the plan. Yeah. So if I wasn't doing this,
Me too, actually. I missed the grades to be a doctor as well. So there you go. Makes two of us. And in terms of personal growth and reflection, What was a pivotal moment in your career that changed the way you see your own self?
Um, I think when I became a mother,
Mm,
uh, it it just brought a different dimension to me, as to how I spend my time. My time at work, I'm very focused at work because it is time away from my family, and so I think that was pivotal to me, and has meant that I've always been in jobs that I've really felt that I can contribute and they're getting something back from me, that we've got this connection and that I'm enjoying, um, because this time is so valuable when I'm in the office.
yeah, I love that. And it linked into probably the podcast that we talked about a second ago, and also you're traveling a lot. Is there any other ways that you keep growing in terms of personally and professionally when you're already at the top?
Um, I love new experience. I'm not sure if I'm at the top, but it's I love new experiences, and I think it's by being uncomfortable, that I grow. And so, yeah, sometimes there are interviews I have to do or videos to film or whatever it might be where my first reaction is, oh my gosh, this is a bit scary. What if I do this wrong? You know, the imposter syndrome comes in. And so, um, but then I give myself a talking to, and it's like being in the karate ring. And I think, okay, Honor, do it. And I think that's how you grow and continue to grow by doing unfamiliar, uncomfortable things professionally.
No, I totally agree. I think failure is the greatest teaching, and I think the more times you fail, the more you're online to the right course. So, and I think you're right in terms of when you do truly have a word with yourself, get into your heart space, get into that state of courage, and go out there, you can make a massive difference. Two final questions, which are interlinked. They might be the same. If you can think of two different ones, even better. So, the first question is, what advice would you give to your younger self who is about to step into the financial world those many years ago?
I had, you know, when I was like 20, I had this whole career plan planned out as to what I wanted to be doing at what point, where, and how. And it's completely not been the journey that I've gone on, because you have to have these worlds collide of what you want to do and what's available in the market and where there's opportunity. And so that is a very special, unique way to move forward. And so for me, it's about go with the flow, make sure that you are giving everything you can to take the most opportunities, but also understand that you may be going off in a different direction.
I love that. And it may be what you're going to give me for the next answer, but if you can think of a different one. So if all the podcasts, all the news articles, all the accolades were taken away and you were on a stage at 94 years of age, it was your legacy speech to leave one last message with the world, what would that be?
Um, I like the it's not what you do, but it's how you make people feel. I
Hmm.
think that for me is the legacy that I would want to leave to people.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm sure with all your answers today, you're going to make people feel, oh, they're going to make people have a big smile, especially all the people that
So
we as well. So, Honor, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. I wish you every success going forward.
thank you, and thank you for having me on. It's a real privilege to be on this podcast with you, Doug.
Likewise, having you. My name's Doug Gordon, and you've been listening to Honor Solomon on Inspirational People, Inspirational Stories. I'll be back next week with another inspirational guest. In the meantime, if you need to get in touch, please contact me at doug@dougdgordon.com. From all of us here on the team of the show, I wish you a truly inspirational week and look forward to speaking to you next time. Bye for now.